Listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very privileged to have Dr. Vic Manzo here. And you were a pediatric chiropractor?
Yes, sir.
And you've changed all that. You are a like a mindset business coach.
Yep.
Sweet.
Exactly.
Well, before we start getting into a conversation, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a seeker to know more, and love to knowledge. And you can see that just off my stuff. I'm always trying to learn more about life in every way I can. And, this is where my journey started to go into chiropractic, was just wanting to know more and more as much as I can about health. And when I saw it change my life, then all of a sudden I was like, man, I need to learn more. I want to know how deep can I go with this? How much can I really grasp on how that is? And, I've done that for the last 12 years, and there came a point in time, the last 3 years. So about 9-10 years into my career, I was studying so much on self-help, personal development, motivation speaking, listen to the top business people, entrepreneurs, what's the top books to read. I was doing this for about 8-9 years. And I started getting tired of the advice they were giving, because it wasn't as congruent to the laws of nature and the universe and the body. And in anytime my litmus test is always, if it goes against nature in the universe and the body and how things work, then it's not something I want to incorporate in my life, because those things have been around just a little bit longer than humans have, just a little bit, not by much, but just a little bit. And it became one of those things where I was like, you know what, I want to start helping entrepreneurs break through this process and really tap into the mind. And because of my background in energy medicine, my background with chiropractic and understanding the brain and how that functions with behavioral psychology, and they call it behavioral neurology, and then looking at all these components, I was like, I could put something together to help entrepreneurs, because I did it for myself first. And when I saw the results, I was blown away by it. And then it became a point like, okay, how can I learn more? How can I perfect this more? How can I get better at this? And sometimes when you do something, the best way to learn something is teach it. Mm-hmm. And so I started to teach entrepreneurs to do this. And I was doing it for the last 3 years until just last year, December 2021, decided to go full time into this and make that my main career for now. Because I never know where the future is going to hold. If you told me 10, 12 years ago that I was going to be a business mindset coach and I would not be doing chiropractic anymore, I would have looked at you and said, nah, I would have been out through that work for nothing. No, I'm going to be a chiropractor for the rest of my life. And here I am right now, being a business mindset coach and not doing chiropractic at the moment.
And you're an author as well?
Yes, I've written 3 books. My recent one was in May, just released, Decoding the Matrix. But yeah.
So I know a lot of people tend to get burned out and they just get tired of life, basically. Why do you think that's so prominent here in America?
They lose two things. One is the loss of focus on their vision and purpose of why they do what they do. That I know it sometimes can be a cliche, but it comes to that. But that may not be it. That's why I said there's 2 of them, because the first one, I had burnout often. It was about every 6 months, I just get fatigued and tired. And I was just like, I don't know. Do I want to continue? And I'm very passionate about what I do. I won't do something unless I'm very passionate. I stand 100% behind it. And so what ended up, the other thing that got me was I wasn't being authentic with myself. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, and my book talks a little bit about this too, where it's the conditioning of the mind, how we're conditioned. So I had no background of someone who was successful in business or a doctor in my family. I didn't have any resources of that. I had to go seek and find as much as I could. And some of them I had to pay, and sometimes I couldn't afford it. So I would look up books, I would take classes of theirs. I was trying to study. So what I was doing is finding out what does a successful chiropractor look like? Because I had no clue what that looked like. And when I started to study them, and I studied lots and lots of chiropractors, I was like, okay, that's a successful chiropractor. Great. Put that in my head, right? I'm conditioned now. What it was their belief system, that what may have worked for them. And now I'm taking it in. What happened though is about 5-6 years in my career, after I hit my financial peak, I was like, I'm not happy. I'm unfulfilled. I was like looking at my wife saying, if this is all it is, I'm not going to continue doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow. I go, I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. Like there's an emptiness in me. And that was the moment I changed my practice around. I took a 40% hit financially. It was my choice. We looked at what we wanted to create our practice to be. And then we just started to filter out patients that just didn't fit the office anymore. We referred them out to other chiropractors because we had a message of what we wanted to serve. And what I started to do was run my practice that was authentic to me, what mattered most to me. And it was all about the laws of the universe, taking those into consideration. You know, the law of least effort states the least amount of work to get the greatest gain. You're always told to work smarter but not hard, and work smarter, not harder. But no one teaches you that. And if you look at the business world, they tell you to work harder. Hard work means success, you know, and it's like, and I just didn't like those principles. And I said, this is against the laws of the body, laws of nature, and so many other things. So I started to incorporate that. So if it's not remembering your why, which sometimes it could be that one, that's the easy one, then it's not choosing the path you truly want for you and your life and your family, whatever it may be. And that's what happened to me. And all of a sudden, from that moment on, I started to follow what was important to me. I stopped reading books, listening to podcasts, even though I'm a big component of listening to podcasts. I have one myself, but it's one of those things I had to stop the input of information and just say, you know what, I've been studying things for so long. How about I just take what I know and figure out what really matters to me and then just start to create that. And then what happened was I let life guide me. And I call this leveraging the universe or leveraging life, which means when there was something coming up that was not like, I kept seeing a problem show up and I just couldn't solve it. That's when I'd be like, okay, what podcast can I listen to that aligns with this? What book can I follow or books can I read that can help me learn to be better at this thing that I need to solve right here? Mm-hmm. And what happened was when I started to take the reins over and let, universe, God, whatever you want to call it, guide me in that way, then all of a sudden I was getting more wisdom. Well, I got more wisdom in 1 year than I did in the last 5 years doing all the reading. Cause I would read 80 to 120 books a year. That was what was told that you want to be successful. Don't watch TV. Anytime I was doing something, I was either listening to a book, listening to a podcast, listening to a video. So, but that's the kind of path I took where I started to take it into my own way and be authentic. What mattered to me to be successful and to be a successful chiropractor and then be success in life. And so when I did that, I haven't had burnout in over 5 years. And I remember I was having it every 4 to 6 months. And my body would show up too. I'd have back issues and other things would come up and flare. And I haven't had any of those things. And it's amazing. My whole entire life has transformed and it has improved in all areas because I'm leading my life to what matters most to me rather than what someone's telling me or what the next expert is saying, how to get to this thing.
So when you filtered out your patients, you just had some that were kind of going through the motions and you had others that were really wanting to fix the problem?
Yeah, I always wanted to have a wellness style practice. So it's called a lifestyle practice. And that was, and working on kids was very important to me. And so what happened was I had a former coach who was like, hey, just meet people where they are, right? Just meet them where they are, right? It's not about your agenda. It's about where they are. And I thought that was good advice. But then you get a lot of patients who are getting upset because they're not getting results, but then they're not following care and they're not being committed. Or they'll choose, I can't do 3 times a week. Like I say, one of my recommendations off the bat was 3 times a week. And they'd be like, well, I can only do once a week. And well, coach said, hey, meet them where they are. It's their health. And I would give them, hey, if you do this may not get the results. We may have, these neurological things will show up, and you won't have symptoms, but the issues will be still there. It's like you put the fire out, so the fire alarm goes off, but we never really cleared the reason why the fire was there in the first place. And I said, there's a lot of patterning we have to do to work that out of the system. And so it just got to a point where it was like, it was very frustrating for me because I want to see results. It's not about my ego in this. I want to see the results for my patients because that excites the heck out of me. That's liquid gold to me. That's why I do chiropractic, is because I was like, I want to be able to, have them be, if they come in and they think they're at their last straw, because most of the time people go to a chiropractor when it's the last thing, not the first. And they've been through the gambit of the medical system. And then they go to a chiropractor and it's just like, I'm hoping this works. I've tried everything. And so then all of a sudden you give them that hope and all of a sudden you change their life. That was what I looked forward to. But if I didn't hold them to and say, well, the way my mindset worked after I started thinking about this is like, if I went to a master in something, let's say martial arts or whatever, and I say, I want to learn to master this. And he's going to tell me, well, this is what you're going to have to follow and do strictly. And I say, you know what? I like that, but how about if I modify that a little bit? And he's going to look and go, no, you want to learn from the best? This is what you're going to have to do. And I said, why is that okay for that or other situations, but it's not okay for me to do that? And so I really had to do, and there was a lot of limiting beliefs in there, a lot of stuff that I had to work through. But I was like, I want to make sure that they're getting results. So I got very strict with my care and recommendations and so forth. But guess what happened? Patients got better. We saw the results. We saw a huge shift in them. And I was like, see, this is what I've always wanted to work towards. And so that was kind of the process of how we who was just kind of not sticking and didn't want to. Then we just told them, listen, things have kind of changed here a little bit. Unfortunately, there's nothing against you. I appreciate some of them been with me for like 4 or 5 years. But it was just one of those things. I'm like, if we can, if you want to get, if we can get a little serious on things and just be a little committed more, then we can change this. But if not, we're kind of moving in a different direction. And some really greatly appreciate it. They're like, I know I have to be committed. I just got to figure that out. And I said, if things change, give us a call. We'd be more than happy to serve you. But if not, here's a chiropractor you can go to, or here's a couple, and they're a little bit more loose on their care plans and treatments.
I can't exactly remember who said it, but I believe one of the Greek philosophers had talked about the health started in the spine. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Hippocrates.
Okay.
Look for the spine for the cause. Look to the spine for the cause of disease.
Yeah. The reason why I brought that up, my youngest son, and when he was born, he was deaf in one ear, partially deaf in the other ear. He had all kinds of allergies and other health problems. And, I had to sit under a tent to help him with the breathing machine, the whole 9 yards. And, I volunteered to go out and visit people to come to church. And one of my ministries was a deaf ministry. So met this kid, he was probably in his 20s, but you could tell he hadn't quite developed mentally like the other folks. And got to his house, was inviting him to come, and his father was a chiropractor. And we happened to have my son with us, and I was telling him about all his problems. He said, well, let me take a look at him. You're a chiropractor, what could you do? But he put him on the table. He straightened out his legs and his back and all these other things. And I'm kidding you not, within a few days, his allergies went away. His hearing came back. And we're talking about a kid who they told us by the time he started school, is going to be completely deaf. So that's why we were learning sign language. And all these miraculous things happened for him. Now he's healthy. He's normal, go-getting kid. I was telling you about him a little bit before we started. And I mean, he's got a nursing degree, and he's going to be whatever the top nurses. I don't understand all that stuff. But and he's also got he's like a step away from getting his license to be a realtor. All these things. I mean, this kid just, I don't know, he didn't take after me, that's for sure. He's a go-getter. But I mean, have you seen results like that?
Oh yeah, the first adjustment in chiropractic was on a deaf person in 1895. Made the adjustment, and within a short period of time, his hearing came back. And it's one of those things where there is, it's the essence of, we have to, from a health perspective, we're so conditioned from the medical model that we treat things, right? If I only go to something if I have an issue, right? And we're very reactive, and we're always thought like, well, if I have this, then I go to somebody for this issue to take care of this. And the thing about chiropractic, it is not that at all. We don't treat anything. We don't treat a condition, an illness, a symptom, or disease. There is no adjustment that can treat like a deafness or allergies or sinus infections or autism or ADHD. There's no adjustment for those things.
Right.
But what a chiropractor does is we look at the brain and how to improve the function of the brain and get communication better to the brain. So the brain and the body are communicating better. When that happens, the body now can adapt better to one's environment. That's the essence that's the polarizing difference between medical and chiropractic. Is chiropractors, we don't try to change the environment. We change you to adapt better to your environment. That's actually true health, because like Darwin, he always gets quoted for the survival of the fittest, or the survival, the strong, the strongest will survive, or something along those lines. But if you ever read his quote, it's actually, he doesn't even title it at all. He says that it's not about the strongest or the fastest or whatever it may be. He says it's the one who can adapt that survives. That's his quote. And so when you think about that, that's the essence of what we do as chiropractors, and we help individuals adapt better to their environment. And that's why you can see something like allergies just go away. I can't tell you how many times allergies I can talk many stories on that. But it's also, even kiddos who had like autism, how they improved the better, or ADHD, and we help to get them to focus better. Not that we're trying to change them, because we're not. ADHD is a gift. You can tell I talk a little fast. I was probably an ADHD kid, never diagnosed, but after I went through chiropractic school, I look back and go, man, was I an ADHD kid? I had every symptom in the book. But it's one of those things. There's gifts to these things too, but it's just helping the body to adapt as best as it can, to adapt to the environment. And when it can do that, that's when it thrives. That's when it's its healthiest. As long as you stay in that moment, the aspect of that, and keep it there, then the body will continually get better and better and better and better. In the long term, this is why I wanted a lifestyle practice, because if I knew the research that if someone could be under chiropractic care for like 5 years or 7 years, I know some people go, that's a long time. But if you look at the data of how much their dependency on like drugs drastically decreases by like 85%, or some of the longevity factors that come from this, how longer people are going to have more life, not living longer, but more life in their years. It's just crazy. And it's just like, that's what my main vision is. And what I do. I want to help people thrive in life, and not just for a temporary standpoint, but a long-term standpoint.
I guess you've kind of applied that philosophy with the health into the business mindset as well, huh?
Very easy to do, because, you look at chiropractic, what we do a lot of the times, 80% of the time, that causes disruption in your nervous system, or these miscommunications that we call a subluxation, is the mental emotional component. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when I was hearing that in chiropractic school, I was kind of going, all right, I want to learn more about the mental emotional component. How can I learn about emotions? So I went into energy medicine to understand the lowest, or the deepest aspect of how healing works. And what came out of that is I learned the most deepest aspects about life and other things, because it all interconnects. And I was just like, wow, I was blown away by this. And I was like, okay, I want to learn. What else can I learn? So I started, the more I got into the mind and learning about spiritual truths and universal laws, seeing the connections, quantum physics really helped me in that, because that was the science besides the neuroscience, but that was another part of science I was pulling in to be like, okay, how can I, because if you talk about spirituality, a lot of times people take that and they're like, oh, that's that crazy woo-woo stuff. And I'd be like, it's not woo-woo stuff. I'd have patients tell me that. And I'd be like, it's not woo-woo. I go, let me show a quantum physics study, or let me show you a water experiment study, or let me show you this study. I'm like, there is truth to this. And we are bridging that gap now, or we can understand what people were saying 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Now we're starting to understand that what they said was true, and how the mind works, how life works to certain degrees. And the quantum physics has backed up a ton of that, and understanding consciousness and so much more.
Well, speaking of your mindset, why is it a lot of people seem to be scared to become successful?
That is such a great question, because there's the two things that people have. It's the fear of success or the fear of failure, right? And I've known in time, it's more of a fear of success. And when you have a fear of success, it can be a limiting belief that you have of a low self-worth, right? It can be that you're not valued. You're not worthy enough to have that kind of success. Because if you become, or it can be something along the lines of, and then it's not like a one-way answer, but it's I'll give you some examples. It's like kind of looking at like, well, I want to be successful, but I've heard that, when you're successful, you don't have time for family. So if you have that programming in your mind as a belief, you will never be successful, because you have a block that holds you back. Right. Or it can be, you think you can't, you're going to be, your life's going to be uncontrolled, whatever that may be. Or you become successful, and it can be the money and the financial success is going to change you, because you have some negative beliefs when it comes to money. There's a lot of variables to it. And when I work with clients, my job is, I don't pick out like and say, well, based on, some analysis, here you go, this is what your limiting beliefs are. I let life and their communication of what they're going through and what their triggers are. And that opens the door for me to see, where are those limiting beliefs? Why does the fear exist in the first place? And we go down that path. And as that things keep showing up, it gives me a pattern recognition, so I can start to see, wow, here you go. When this happens, here's the emotion that comes, here's the tone of your voice, here's the words you're choosing, here's the story you tell yourself. there's a limiting belief there. Let's do the work now to go there, because now it opened the door for me to create awareness, and I can start to pinpoint why that all exists. And then once we remove it, then you realize that, it doesn't have to be that way. Actually, because like for me, when I used to see a lot of successful people, and you can see it in the business world, the relation, you'll see, I've seen it so many times. You see a very successful person doing very, very well, and then they end up in divorce. They don't have a great relationship with their kids, or they don't take care of their health, or it's all the above. And I'm not bashing anything like that. It's just, to me, when I look at that, it's just an individual who they haven't focused on looking at a well-balanced aspect of it, or more harmonized aspect of their life. But I kept seeing it, and I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that for me. Like, I want to have an amazing relationship. I want to be in the best health. I want to be XYZ. And what I realized as time went on, I was like, I get to choose what that is. Like just because success doesn't mean you have to sacrifice. And that's something I teach a lot of my clients, that you don't have to sacrifice your time, your health, your money, or your family to become successful. You don't have to. And I think that's something we think we have to, because even in business school, I got a bachelor in business, and it was one of the things we learned: opportunity cost. When you go do one thing, you're gonna have to give up something else. And so it was taught right there. And it's been taught in a lot of aspects of our life. I remember as a kid, my dad used to tell me, well, if you're going to, you do this is what it's going to be. And you're not gonna be able to do that. And so it was all these limitations. And then eventually, when I started to step into my own and be like, I'm going to choose, I've studied enough. I'm going to choose what matters most. I'm going to have my cake and eat it too. I was actually able to do that. And so now I teach clients to do that too. So when we get into those, long-winded answer, but when you get to the limiting beliefs of why that fear is there in the first place, that's my personal thing. What I've seen is it's usually like a low self-worth, or you have a negative limiting belief when it comes to money or success or something along those lines.
All right. I want to use podcasting as an example. So I watch mostly YouTube during the day when I'm doing my work. And I hear some big time YouTubers out there that talk about all this time they spend, and all these hours and yada yada yada. And granted, I do spend quite a bit of time working on this, because there's the bookings, there's the actual interviews, you've got the editing and the uploading, promoting, all that kind of stuff. But I think this surely doesn't take as much time as they say that it's taking. Do they think that they just have to sound that way to make it themselves successful? Because I understand the time and effort you put into it, but I don't think it's as much as they say.
No, one of the things I'm working towards, I want to create my life as a 6-hour work week. Mm-hmm. And to make the money that I want to make at a 6-hour work week. Now, some people say, "Oh, that's crazy. You can never do that." I said, "Well, people told me I couldn't have a 14.5-hour work week in my office and be close to 7 figures. And I did. Or I couldn't have a 14.5-hour work week in my chiropractic office and be able to serve families and all that. And I did do that. So it's one of those things where, we are so conditioned that you have to work hard. It's called sweat equity, right? You hear it all the time. You got to put the sweat equity in. People say, I've heard some people who are very successful, they make millions a year, and they'll say, in your first couple of years of business, you're going to have to work at least 68 hours a week. That's just what it is. And I was always like, all right. In my first time when I was a chiropractor, I was listening to this advice. So I was doing research, I was studying, I was marketing, I was doing all that I can. Now I'm in the second realm where this business is not really new per se. It's already been established, but it's now my work I do is very minimal to a sense where, I have 3 to 5 hour days. And they're broken up throughout the day to where I'm doing work on different things. And I'm just like putting my time, effort, and saying, well, here's one of the things I teach my clients a lot is energy management. And there's variables to that. But one of them we're talking about here is, how do you get your energy to be so laser focused so that when you do that and you can really get centered there, you will get more work done in that short period of time than an 8-hour day. And a lot of my clients sometimes think that's crazy, or people say, oh, that's crazy stuff. I'm like, well, I wrote a book in less than 24 hours, not bragging. That's not to impress you. That I don't care about any of those things. My last book I wrote was less than 24 hours, like 21, 22 hours is what it took me to write actual writing. Right. And I tell people, I said, I'm not here to brag. What I'm trying to show you is this is an example of when you do laser focus work, You can just get into this place. You can call it the zone. You can call it being in the flow. It's getting into this place where all of a sudden you just are so focused. You get so much work done. And then all of a sudden, like I remember I'd be writing for an hour and a half, 2 hours straight. And all of a sudden I look and I go, I pretty much have a chapter here. This is great. All right, let's get to the next one. And then all of a sudden I have another chapter. And so it's one of those things where you don't have to work so hard. You have to find what's that balance or what's that sweet spot for you. And knowing, I can't tell you that. That's the thing about business world. And I don't want to bash the business world. It's just, there's so much force advice, a force energy advice. What that means is you got to do a lot of outside action of doing in order to get to success. And they don't talk a lot about the being. I mean, I heard Grant Cardone on one of his TikTok videos or someone else's TikTok video on Grant Cardone. And he was not bashing per se, but he was kind of mocking the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is one of the best self-help books ever written. And he was like, you can't just, I never thought my success to just come to me. He goes, you have to take action. I'm sorry. He goes, you have to take action. And I wrote a post on this and I said, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing Grant Cardone. The guy's worth $2.6 billion. He's doing something right. Okay.
Right.
But what I do know about human psychology is that when we don't understand something, we bash it. That's the first thing we do is we bash something we don't know. It may be outside his realm. What he doesn't realize is, and this is what I teach a lot of my clients, is that you can go ahead and force to get to your results. You're going to be burned out. Here's burnout, right? We talked about that. Exhaustion, fatigue. You're going to have to sacrifice. That's the world of force. Force means you have to give up something to do. There's this force side that, when you do that, you have to give up things and there's a sacrifice there. It's all the world that we've been told. And that's Newtonian physics. Nothing wrong with it. It's just, force. You have to put a force in to create action or create something. Quantum physics is the same thing, but it's a different look at it. It comes from the essence of your beingness and the power of your beingness. This is what I love about quantum physics, because I can use this thing here called my mind, and that'll take up about 80% of the work. Doesn't mean you have to take action. You always have to take action, but I don't have to work as hard. I can choose to do something. And I feel as long as I'm laser focused with it all and everything's in a tune, I got my vision and all these things, it makes the success process a lot easier. I call it effortless success. Wayne Dyer has coined that effortless action. I like that term. I just twisted it to effortless success, because if you have effortless action, then you're going to align to having success. So it's kind of almost effortless, not 100%, but it's where things are just more smooth. And this is where, when you're in that state, you keep your reserves, you keep your power. You're not giving it up to force things to happen. You're allowing the beautiful design of what you're doing and how everything works to orchestrate to allow for those experiences to happen. And I have thousands of stories I could talk about that in my own journey and other people's too.
So I'm taking I hope I'm getting this right. Part of my problem, I guess, is my patience with how everything's growing. I'll tell you, I have put in a lot of study. I've listened to a lot of advice and applied it. I used to be one of those guys. I would hear somebody tell me something and then I'd kind of, pardon my language, half-ass it. But I wanted to really make this a success. First, when I just began the whole, I want to do podcasting, went out and got a book. Well, let me tell you, if you get a book about podcasting, it's good for the fireplace. Because I took every little bit of advice in there and applied it to my show, and it just did not feel right. One was, write out all these questions and you do this and do that. And so I did. I'd get somebody on and I'm more focused on my questions than I was on my guest. I was waiting for that pause to ask the next question, thinking ahead to the next question. And then they probably answered it before I even asked the question. And one day I just said, you know what? I'm going to just go off the fly on this, right? Worked out wonderfully. All right. Well, I think that was my first step to being a little more successful, is figuring out my niche. And I started listening to all these other podcasters. I said, you would have to do this research and you do this and you do that. I started applying all that. And I did see some growth pretty quick, but then it stalled out. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I do notice that the videos that have a little bit more negative stuff to it, the controversial stuff, the political stuff, the, what's happening in Hollywood stuff, that gets a lot of attention. What I do doesn't seem to attract as much attention. And I see people that are much better at this than I am. I just haven't achieved their level. I'll put it that way. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing myself here, but even they seem to have struggle to get and even though they're a lot further ahead than I am, they still haven't achieved that success. Do I keep grinding at this, or do I need to change what I do? I mean, I really don't want to. I like helping people. That seems to be what makes this all worthwhile.
I think it always comes back to the main, like a client I would always say is, what's your vision? What's that vision? And it's vision that is, what's the big picture that you saw at the end in mind that you wanted to create out of that? And in that essence, if that is very valuable to you and it's worth, that's what your main purpose is, and you keep focusing there instead of the short stuff. Like short term is important, but it's not as important as that long term. And if you see it crystal clear, like, this is why I do what I do. Like, I had a podcast, I just want to unlock people's minds. That was amazing. Share infinite potentiality or possibilities to be able to have an outlet, because I like podcasts, I like talking and stuff, as you can tell probably. And it was one of those things where I'm like, this is what I want to do. And I just didn't have a plan. I just had, this is the main vision of why I would create a podcast. And if it turns into something that makes me money, great. If it doesn't, oh well. I've been doing it for over 4 years. I have 300 and almost 90 episodes now. And I will say this, it has turned out to be something that builds credibility for me. Right? Because now when someone hears me or on social media, or they hear me on a podcast and they're like, I want to know more about this guy, then all of a sudden they go to my podcast, and then all of a sudden I'll just see massive downloads starting to happen. I'm like, yep, somebody's binging. And what happens is they're like, wow, I love your message. I love this. And it's just like, it became a place of credibility. Now I do my own podcast, but I also have people I interview, but it's one of those things where, again, coming back to that vision. Now, if it was me short-term thinking, I was like, oh, maybe I can, Tim Ferriss, this guy makes millions a month, hundreds of $1,000s a month, just podcasting. I was like, oh man, I'd love to get to that level. But, then I started to really get down to what does this really matter for me? Why am I really doing this? And what's the purpose of this? And how does it fulfill me? And when I started to ask those questions and start to answer them, and it's not like I did it logically, I would think about the question, or I'll say the question, and then I just wait till the answer came. It could come in an hour, it could come in a day, it may show up in a week, but I wouldn't force it. I just wait for that to come. And that would be something that I was like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Here's the drive of where I'm going to go. And, it's always been that way for me. And that's kind of the essence I do a lot of things with, because when you have a vision on something, the short-term stuff is not going to affect you as much. Don't get me wrong, you're going to be bothered by it. And I still do to this day, but I'm like, that's fine. This is just part of the obstacles to get to where my vision is. This is just part of the way. And when you start to do that, you don't let the short term get to you so much. So what you'll do is you'll course correct to allow yourself to keep your eye on that vision. And when you can keep yourself focused on a vision that you want, the longer you focus there, that's one part that allows you to create that vision to make it a reality. And quantum physics and neuroscience will support that. And so that's kind of the element that I would look at in that way. The other thing is too, and this is something that took me a long time to learn, is that if you're trying to force something to happen, take a step back, right? Your job is just to show up and put your energy out there every single day. That's all your job is. That's the sweat equity. This is why I tell people, I'll turn the words around and change the meaning of them. So you hear the grind, the hustle, the sweat equity, all these things. I'm like, the sweat equity and the hustle is just showing up every single day and setting your tone and your vibe. What do you want to create for your life for today? What's the vision? How can you move the needle one step forward? How can you raise your vibe to keep the energy moving in that direction? And this is what I do with my coaching clients most of the time. And that when we do this, the whole purpose is that now we're keeping that energy closer and closer to that future self for you. Because you got to understand, everything's energy and vibration. That's the world we live in. Nikola Tesla said everything's frequency, energy, and vibration. The moment that we start to understand that, we will have monumental shifts in human evolution, or evolving with technology and everything. Within 1 year, what we would do in the next like 20 years, something like that. It's a huge number. But long story short, when you understand that everything's a vibration, and law of attraction states like attracts like, you can only vibe. Whatever you're vibing at is going to happen. So nothing happens to you. Everything happens as you are. And as you are is the vibration you hold yourself to. So that's your thoughts, your emotions, and what you focus on. So when you put this into an equation, now all of a sudden you have to look at that vision. You have to keep the focus there, raise your vibe, keep your tone there. That's the work. Now you have to take action. But you notice that's harder stuff to do there than do an action, because you can do action mindlessly. You can be unconscious and just do action. You can go into the realm. How many people, like I tell people all the time, if doing was something that made people successful, then every entrepreneur would be successful, because I don't know many entrepreneurs that are lazy. I really don't. I don't know if you do, but I know I don't. People I work with, they are like grinding things out every week. They're putting the energy out there. And I always tell them, that's great. Let's keep that energy there. The only problem is you may be directing in the wrong way. And like, what do you mean? I said, we got to get you centered focus. We got to go to the mind first and get everything situated there. And then it's not as much work. You'll see things happen easier. And I've had clients, they all of a sudden they'll start to grasp this and understand it, because I'm unconditioning minds all day long. That's all I'm doing, because we're so conditioned in a certain way that we have to work hard and do all these things. And when I'm telling them, don't worry, just focus on your vibe and things will start to change. Just keep doing what you've been doing every single day. Don't change any of that. Let's just focus on the vibe every single day, and then watch how your life will totally change. And they think I'm crazy. 4, 6 months, a year down the road, they're like, oh my God, I look at this opportunity that came up. Oh my goodness, look at what happened here. I have a couple of clients right now that are things that came out of nowhere. And they're like, well, maybe. I'm like, maybe. I'm like, remember when I said, when you focus on the vision, take a step back and let universe, God, whoever they'll co-create with you, that they know more than we do. So they're going to put everything in the work. And one of the things that was another thing I had to learn is that what you seek is also seeking you. And what we do and what we've been taught as a young age, this is all conditioned, this is all programming, we got to unprogram, is that when you have a dream, what do they tell you to do? If you have a dream, go after it. Go get your dream.
Right.
It's one of the worst advice to give, because that's you backwards thinking, because the law states whatever you seek is coming to seek you. And so if you have a dream, it's going to come seeking you as long as you give energy to that dream and focus on it. This is why vision is so critical, because when you focus there, then it's going to say, wow, this person is going to give me life to have an experience. Right? Les Brown talks a lot about this. He does a talk on the deathbed talk, or I think it's called the deathbed speech. And he'll talk about how how many people on their deathbed, there's their family on one side, and on the other side, they had their ideas, their books, and everything they were going to come out with. And they're looking at them in misery because they're going to be dying with them, as they never had an opportunity to live. This is kind of a truth in some way. And so when you think about it in that perspective, now all of a sudden you're like, well, you know what? I'm going after this. This is the dream. This is the thing I want. And I know that it's going to be seeking me because it wants to be alive also. So as long as I keep giving energy and focus there, then it's going to work its way towards me in divine timing. Right? Patience is a big thing. Just I still have to work on this myself. So I haven't mastered patience yet in my life.
Right.
But it's one of those things where when you understand that it's going to happen for you, it will happen. But you have to, there's things in place that have to get there. And sometimes it's most of the time just your vibration working towards that, has to work to get to that specific level. And when you're there, you'll know you're there. And this is where I teach a lot of things, because another thing I teach a lot is getting out of your mind, because we're so much in our mind.
Oh God, yes.
I mean, we're so left brain dominant. We live in the information era. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I use tools to get you out of your mind and get into the body and learn how to tap into the body. Our body is one of the most advanced. It's the most advanced technological thing that we'll humans will ever experience. Problem is we don't give enough regard to it. And plus we don't even know much about it. We only know 10% of what the body does on average. We only use 10% of our brain. We only understand 10% of what our brain is, the potential of what it can do. So when you think about these percentages, there's so much more of what our body can do. And one of the things is when we can get out of our mind, we can actually tap into that other percentages. We can't understand it we can't explain it logically or from a verbal standpoint, because it's beyond that. And that's some of the stuff that I kind of share.
Well, I'm going to monopolize a little bit of your time here. So I want to kind of get into the story of podcasting for me. I am a paranormal investigator, and I said one day I was going to be on a team. I was going to even go as far as investigate with the guys from Ghost Hunters on TV. Well, both of those dreams came true. And not only have I investigated with them, but I'm now friends with a lot of them. But it just didn't seem like enough for me to just to investigate. I wanted to do a little bit more. So then I said, you know what, I can get into podcasting. So I would get other teams to come on, tell about how they do things, what they found. I've gotten just about everybody from the television world to be on my show, and you know, get to know them. But one day I was working security because that was my part-time job up at the HEB Center here in Cedar Park outside Austin. And they were having a Comic-Con. Well, Adrian Paul was there. I don't know if you know who Adrian Paul is, but if you ever watched The Highlander on television back in the 90s, that's who Adrian Paul is. He was also in a few of the movies, but I got to talking to him, and I was on, walking around with my cane, so he kind of asked me, what's going on, and I told him about my condition, and that I also have arthritis. So we spent, instead of talking about him and his show, we spent about 20-30 minutes talking about ways to take care of arthritis. That's how you know you're getting old. So how do you not ask somebody like that to be on your show, right? So I had him on, and I'm trying to incorporate that in the paranormal. I didn't know how to do it. I'm like, this is not going to work. And he actually inspired me to start a different show. And this guy is a very inspiring person. That was my motivation. I wanted to get people that were positive, that had something to say, maybe could help other people. That's me. I love helping other people. And so that was my vision, is I'm going to have a show where I can help people, I can promote people, I can inspire other folks, just whatever I can put out there to bring some positivity in the world. And then my condition got worse, so I had to retire. So I took this a little bit more serious. I'm not going to lie, of course, I do want to make money at this, but my ultimate goal is still to help others, whether it's whoever I have on my show or somebody out there watching this or listening to this. I don't want to lose that focus. I don't want to do the controversial stuff. That's not me. Yeah. So patience and bringing up my vibration. That's what I need to work on.
Yeah. And just keep the focus on helping people, right? Keep the focus on that, because there's energy there. And when you do that, that's your main why of what you're doing. And that's the purpose behind it. And then what happens is the byproduct of focusing on your purpose and what you're passionate about, where your purpose is and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
The byproduct of that is money. And the more you focus on that instead of the money, the more the money follows. It's the weirdest thing, because some people say, well, hold on, you're letting go. Like, I always tell people, when it comes to like creating things in your life, you gotta set it and forget it. Kind of like that commercial with the infomercial with the turkey and stuff. You put it in the thing and set it and forget it. And that's kind of how things work. You have to, and what they mean by forget is lose the attachment. And so many times people don't become successful, especially in a financial realm, is because they're so attached to that outcome of that happening that they don't realize they have to let go of that. And if you can just put your energy into it, and this is what I did, and I'm living proof of it, and I've helped entrepreneurs do the same thing. I 3x my business and over almost 5.5x my profits in 2 years by doing what I'm sharing with right here. I didn't do any marketing. I didn't do anything different. All I did was I focused on loving my patients and seeing who I wanted to be in my office, the beingness of what I wanted to be. What's that chiropractor look like, interacting with kids and moms and families, and just really honing in on just, interconnection and just having good vibes in there, and really just helping them and seeing the stories and all these different things that it wasn't about money at all. Like, money was like not even thought about. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, we over almost 10x we saw 5% pediatrics, and in 6 months we went up to close. We were at like 40 something percent, and I was just like, holy cow, we didn't even do anything. We had one workshop, and that didn't even get the amount of success to that level. But then all of a sudden, it was just that energy of focusing on that. And then for the rest of my 5 to 6, what was that, 16, 15? So 6-7 years, we've maintained a 40-60% pediatric office, which was very important to me. But at the same token, success just kept coming. I never had to worry about things anymore. Like I'd have a low month and I wasn't stressed. Like my wife, like, yeah, we were a little low, but it'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna be good. Just keep loving in my patients and opening that door and know people are going to be coming who are resonating with us to serve, right? Crystal clarity in what that all is. And when you put that energy there, then it's just a matter of time. Unfortunately, and the reason why there has to be some sort of time is because we live in a time-space continuum.
Right.
So your mind can travel to the future and it can see yourself in that future, but we need time and space to get us there. That's just part of the physical realm. Humans are starting to break that down. There are ways and there are things are coming. I am not a master at that yet. When I am, I hope one day that I can be, but we are starting to see things happen faster. And there are ways you can make things faster, but even then, you still have time and space you have to go through. And that's why when some people are on the mindfulness or the universal law side, they're like, you can have what you want instantaneously. It can happen to you, boom. And I'm always like, not necessarily. I don't be giving that advice out. Like, let's be truthful about it. You can in the mind instantaneously make a change, but from the physical, there has to be a process. It could be one day, it could be 1 week, it could be 1 month, but there has to be time.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And the most common doesn't mean it has to be for you, is it's going to take some time. But like to have a 7-figure business on average takes 3 years. That's just what the average rough time frame is. Doesn't mean that's going to be like that for you, but it's going to take that period of time to get to that. Because when I have some clients, I want to come up and they're like, I want to have a 7-figure business. Okay, it's going to be a 3-year process. And they're like, what do you mean 3? I'm like, you know how much stuff we have to break through? You know how much stuff's holding you down? We got to work on all that to get you up to that point. So then we can create that. And some people do it sooner and some people take later. And I always tell people, who cares about the time? See, we're so caught up in time. And this is something I share a lot with my clients is if you're focusing on time or you're saying I should be here at this point, that's all ego. Let that go because you're forcing it. And that's not how things work. It's a dance. I don't know if you're into dancing at all, but like whether it be
Not anymore.
that's right. But in the olden day, back in the day, right? It's one of those things where you look at like, I liked Latin dance, so I did a lot of salsa and merengue and cumbias and all that. And one of the things with that dance is when you're dancing with someone, you can't like if I'm being too dominant of a leader, it's not going to go well. But if I find that happy medium and I can just lightly lead, it's again, effortless success, effortless action, where it's just the slightest touch and it's just enough. This is how life works. Just enough where they can go ahead and pick up on she picks up on the cue, and then we can go ahead and then guide. And it's just we're just going off each other and bound, go. It's a beautiful flow. That's how life was designed to be. And that's how it is intended for us to really achieve that level of success. And really more importantly, my purpose in life right now has been is to really help individuals find true fulfillment in a soul-filled life. Because we're just the way people are doing things, you get so caught up in social media and caught up on all these things that, okay, yeah, you could become a millionaire. That's great. But if you don't have that fulfillment, right? Well, I'll be fulfilled. I have the money. I'm fulfilled. No, you're not. That's research shows that's 100% not true. It's fulfillment in every aspect of your life and leading. And more importantly for me, it's having people do it in the way they want to. That's the most important thing for me and my time now and my message of what I'm trying to share with entrepreneurs is how you create the success of what you want to create, right? If you want to do it in podcasting, you want to level up and that's what your vision is. You can listen to, like example, you were like, I read the books. Yeah, I didn't read, I tried reading those books and I said, forget this. Because it was too logical. It was too systematic and it was really messing up my flow. Just like when I came to writing my first book. I remember when I wrote my first book, friends were asking me, how did you do this? Did you do this outline? Did you do it this way? Did you do it that way? I was like, no. I tried doing the outline stuff, like mapping out what your book's going to be each chapter, breaking it down into sequence, I was like, I tried that and it stressed me out. And I was like, I just didn't feel like it was me. So then all of a sudden I just started writing. I was like, hell with this. I'm gonna do automatic writing. That's why I never give credit to my books because really it's really not me per se, even though I'm the one writing it. When I'm in that state of flow, what comes out of me when I read back later, I'm like, wow, I wrote that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty, that was, wow, I pulled that story to connect with that. I didn't even think of that. Like, I'm not thinking, it's just a flow process. And so I can't really even give credit to myself for some of these books I write. But it's one of those things where I'm losing my train. But when I did it in that way, I all of a sudden it was more resonating with me and what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing how I wrote my podcast, kind of similar to yours. I just said one day, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have people on my podcast. But here's the thing. I'm not even going to like research up all that they are and what they're up to. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have them on the podcast and I'll just get to know them there. And sometimes they'll be like, didn't you read my bio? I'll be like, I didn't read your bio. I go, because I want to know you. I don't want to interfere with any of the process. I just want to have a conversation, an authentic conversation, connecting with you so that we can just connect and have a good time. And that's the main purpose of why, when I have an interview, that's what I do. And that's the only purpose behind it. And there's nothing else. And it always works out well. And I would say about 99% of the time, this is no lie, the guest at the end would be like, great interview, man. Great questions. I felt like you were really in tune. And it's because we're having a conversation. I'm listening. Where if I had the questions and I had these all things figured out, it wouldn't have that energy. It wouldn't be as well as it is because of that also.
Well, because a lot of people may not know, we actually met through an app called Podmatch. And unfortunately, I read all of the stuff that is on Podmatch. So I knew a little bit about you, but I didn't know everything. I will say that I just kind of got the gist of it. I didn't want to know too much, but I think I'm going to do a little less research then. Maybe that'll make me work a little harder at the questions.
It creates a lot of curiosity. I mean, the only time I ever do a little research is just if I have a bigger name coming on, then I'm like, let me just see what they're up to. Let me see what they've been doing. But it's very little. It's just like, what book are they up to? Or what they've been doing, what projects they've been working on, just so I can have an understanding of where they're kind of moving towards. But literally, I mean, I'll give you my secret of how I do interviews. And it's literally right before we get on the show. Number one, I'm going to tell you I want you to share your story. I don't care how long and short it is. It's up to you, however you want to share. And then number two, what's the topic you want to discuss? What's something that you've been passionate about? Okay, great. Let's go ahead. We're going to, give them my couple things. And then I'm like, all right, we'll have a good time and let's hop on. And then we just go from there. That's literally that's the essence. That's anyone who wants to do podcasting. That's the way I've done podcasting.
Well, when I have someone famous on, like a musician or an actor, my audience already knows that they're a musician and an actor. I want to know something different that you don't normally hear in an interview, because you got a rock star on there. I had Rudy Sarzo on. He's one of my examples I use. Bass player for Quiet Riot. Okay, you know who Rudy Sarzo, you know that he was in Quiet Riot. You know all about the songs and all that stuff, and I know he's been asked the same questions a million times. I want to know something that you would normally talk about. Then I got to know about his family coming over here from Cuba and the struggles they went through to become citizens, and all those kind of things. I have made friends for asking questions like that, getting to know something outside. I want to generally know who you are, what makes you who you are, why are you motivated to do the things you are. I think the audience benefits from that too. You hear those stories. Oh yeah, definitely. I will say, in just this little bit of time, you changed my outlook on what I want to do for sure. The goal's still the same, but I know I need to switch my focus from that. Oh my God, I need to make money doing this. You know what? I'm making it fine. I think the rest will come later. I do have a goal, since I'm working with veterans now, trying to get their stories out there and get some of them the help they need. And let me tell you what, folks, not to take away from this interview, veterans go through a lot of red tape to get the help that they need. And that's why a lot of them give up. That's why a lot of them end themselves. So we need to help them. I want to open a facility where they can come and stay, get a change of clothes, get some food in their belly, a place where they can get the counseling they need, a place where they can get like if they need lawyers or whatever it is they need. I want that to be there to help somebody help them through the steps. I don't care if they have a drug problem. I don't care if they have an alcohol problem. I want to get them a change of clothes and a place to live so they don't have to worry about that. They can worry on focusing on themselves. That's where my goal is. That's why I want to, not only take care of myself, but I want to help these folks out. They put their lives on the line for us. I think that's the least we could do for them.
No, amen to that. That's such a noble mission. And it's, again, coming back to just tying it all up to what we talked about too. It's when you focus on that feeling, right? Of what, I talk about this and I talked about it in my first book. I go through this with my coaching clients, and is that you got to get into this feeling and know what this feeling is. It's a light feeling. It's everyone's different. It's your intuition in some ways, but it's this feeling. And when you tap into this feeling, then when you start to look at what you want to do, that feeling comes back and all of a sudden becomes a guidance system to know when you're in alignment to what matters most to you.
Yeah.
Because that's non-logical. When you get into a feeling, it's non-logical. So you may not, your left brain and your ego is kind of going, I call it leveraging your mind, because you're using the ego to be aware of it. You're training your mind to be aware of when that feeling is. So the brain goes, hey, we have that feeling showing up here. And you'll be like, great, I know I'm in alignment then. So it's a way we work with the ego, because the ego is not a bad thing. But staying in that energy and focus, it'll help you guide you in ways to where you're like, well, I want to do the podcast now. When you started talking about veterans and doing all that, you had such a more, there was more energy there. There's more depth to your conversation there. And that's something that is probably going to be even more fulfilling to you than anything else you probably have done. And it's true. Veterans, I mean, I know the stats on just side alone, and it's so high compared to that. And what they don't get for what they've done is just, it's really is sad, but those are, and they're one of the most passionate people. I have some friends that are vets and they've gone through their struggles and, come out on the other side, but it's one of those things where, learning about the systems and so forth, it's something that definitely needs a lot of support.
Well, I'll admit my ego is in there too. I'm selfish. I like the idea of being able to help someone else because of the feeling that I get when I do. And I'm addicted to that. I won't lie. I'm addicted to that.
and that's a good selfish feeling, right? Because it's one of those things where we think of selfishness as a bad term, but there's two sides to everything. So it's just like, I was very selfish to, like, when I'm working with a patient, it's one of those things where I'm so looking forward to the story. Same thing when I work with coaching clients. It's the same thing. Nothing's different. I look forward to that story of how I had a little part to their transformation. It's just like when I tell my patients all the time, when they come to me as a chiropractor, and they'll be like, oh my, I hear this all the time. Doc, oh my God, you've helped me so much. Or man, you helped my mom will be telling me, oh my God, what you did for my child. And I look at them and I'll say, I didn't really do much. And like, don't do that. Don't take it away. I'm like, I'm not taking it away. First of all, thank you for the compliment. Number two, I'm a straight shooter. So here's the thing. I played a small percentage in this. I can't take credit for everything that happens after the adjustment. I can't take credit for the millions of things that goes on after that. That's not me. That's you, or that's your child, and that's your commitment to bringing your child here. So kudos to you. And that's the amazing power what the body can do when you give it the opportunity to get the information it needs so it can adapt and thrive. And so it's the same thing in my coaching when the clients go through these big changes. I'm like, it's not me. I was a facilitator. I'm an influencer. That's it. You're doing the work, you're showing up, you're being committed. Give yourself the credit, because we've been trained as a society. Again, you hear me going back to this all the time. We've been trained as a society to give credit outside ourselves. Right? It's always away from us instead of us being the source. And I don't mean that from an ego standpoint, but I mean it from a stance of like, wow, I did this, yes, they helped me. And I'm greatly appreciative for that. But wow, I did that. Like, I took the actions. I made the choices. The one who had to do that at the end of the day.
When I get those comments that they thank me for whatever message came out, or the person that I brought on, it's just, that gives me a dopamine hit. You know what I mean?
That's a good one to get addicted to, my friend.
Yeah. I mean, that's not my goal, but I'm not gonna lie. I love it when somebody leaves me a nice comment. There are those private messages on my social media, what have you. I thank them, because they've really kept me motivated to do this too. So now you have the books. Where do we purchase those books?
They're available on Amazon. I have them in Audible, in audiobook. I have them in Kindle. I have them on paperback. So all of them are available there to get access to them.
Are those links on Podmatch?
They might be. I can send you I have like an author link that I might be able to, I don't know if it's there. I can send it to you. And that way, when you click on it, you can see me, the author, and then it ties any book I have written to that.
Okay. Yeah. If you could send me any links that you'd like for me to share in the description, I'd appreciate that. 'Cause I like the audience to be able to just click on it and go straight to it.
Totally.
And do you have a website?
Yeah. You can find out more about me at empoweryourreality.com. That's where, I have free coaching call set up. I got free resources on there. If you're on social media, if you go down to the bottom left of the website, I play at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. So you can go over there and, just click on one of the icons. It'll take you right to my social media pages and so forth.
Oh, I love LinkedIn. That's my favorite one. I spend more time on LinkedIn than I do anything else. I think because the people seem a little more serious on there.
Yeah.
And you are who you surround yourself with. Let's put it that way.
Yes, sir. I couldn't agree more with you on that one.
But I'm going to share all those links as well. And I want to thank you for your time. You have really changed me today. I take a little bit from everyone.
I appreciate that, brother. That was one of my purposes, setting the intention for today, just helping at least one person in this interview. So if that happened to be you, I've done my job for today.
Amen to that. And you're always welcome to come back too, especially if you have something to promote. Please let me know.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
And I also want to thank all of you out there. If you are new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you'll come back and please hit that subscribe button. For the rest of you, if you are regulars, thank you for that support. I can't thank you enough. And until the next one, everyone take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network